Hey YouTube, what's going on? One and only Lee Sanders here of the RCWR show, coming at you all with another album review. And this go round, we are talking about Nine Inch Nails making their triumphant return with their ninth studio album. It is a LP, but that is up for great debate, and we'll actually dive a lot more into that debate in just a hot second. But it's their ninth studio album titled Bad Witch. And for those of you that are familiar with the Social Network soundtrack, you know Atticus Ross, who has been honestly a really great collaborator of Trent Reznor. He helped him out big time on this album as well. So before we dive into it, if you're new to the channel, welcome, where we talk a little bit about entertainment stuff, music, little sports. We do a little bit of everything here at the RCWR show. The motto covering the very latest in entertainment and beyond, and have been doing so since 2011. So if you have not done so already, do hit the subscribe button down below. Also, make sure you click on that little bell icon so you know about notifications, because we tend to upload a lot of good content here on a weekly basis. All right, so let's dive right into it. Now, look, do not let the do-rag fool you. All right, longtime listeners of my show, my podcast, know that I am a big Nine Inch Nails fan. I have all of the albums. We were on this very same channel some years back reviewing Hesitation Marks by Nine Inch Nails. So we do have a really good track record here when not only does it come to Nine Inch Nails, but when it just comes to covering all things rock, metal, rap. I mean, very universal here on this channel. So when I heard about this album, and I heard how a lot of people were complaining about the fact that, oh man, it's only 30 minutes. This isn't even an LP, it's a damn EP. What the hell? I'm going, hey, it's new music. Why are we bitching? Like, I don't really understand that. Why are we bitching? And originally, Bad Witch was supposed to be a third as part of a concept trilogy. Everything had pretty much began with 2016's Not the Actual Event, and then 2017's Add Violence. And as Trent Reznor was spending his time trying to fine tune, figure out, okay, how am I going to make a follow up to these last two? How we're going to put a nice, pretty little ribbon around this trilogy? He just decided, okay, you know what? The type of material that I'm working on right here, this is really heavy stuff. Kind of feels like it needs to just go in an entirely different direction, and it needs to become an LP. So he went on ahead, hooked up with his man, Atticus Ross, and the rest is history with this ninth studio album titled Bad Witch. Now, let's talk about this whole EP LP debate. All right, man, I have been collecting music of all types. My God, one of the first albums I remember buying as a young teenager was Alice in Chains Facelift, their debut album. And I had pretty much got that maybe about 4 years after it had came out. So I'm definitely an old school head over here when it comes to my rock and all that. So I've seen my fair share of albums that were released either as an EP or as an LP. When you go back and you look at the days of Led Zeppelin is a really great example. Some would make the argument, well, what they put out, when you look at it in modern time, a lot of people would look at it and say, well, what they put out was an EP. But no, when you go way back then, you look at the type of technology that was available back then, you saw how it was. A lot of times you would have like the 8 tracks, vinyl, one side, and then you had to flip it over or whatever. Really, it just had to do with the type of technology that was available at that time. Now, of course, as you progress, like I know for me in the 90s, there were a lot of rock bands that had released a lot of EPs. Alice in Chains, I just talked about them. Alice in Chains being one of them. You had Jar of Flies. And you also had, oh, what was the other EP that they did? Jar of Flies and SARS. No, am I right? I think I did title that one right. But my point is, as good of an EP as those were, you still had really great freaking music that was on those EPs. I mean, when you go to Jar of Flies in particular, Nutshell, No Excuses, God, man, I mean, really great stuff on there. And then when you go to the other one, you know what? I gotta do this justice. I actually gotta look up those EPs I was talking about and see, yeah, let me pull this up real quick for you guys here. Bear with me a second here. Cause I will piss off Alice in Chains fans. I'm telling you, if I mess up the name of that sap. See, I don't know why. I was like, it was like a short letter word, sap. Yeah. Alice in Chains, sap, and Jar Flies. Two of like the best EPs when it comes to rock music that you'll ever come across. And I remember when those were released, nobody was complaining about those EPs whatsoever, especially Jar of Flies. Like I said, it had Nutshell, No Excuses. You go over the Sap, and you had a really great collaboration with Chris Cornell, Right Turn. That was really good. You also had Got Me Wrong. So, a lot of good stuff. But, in today's day and age, when you hear that your favorite artist is getting ready to come out with a new album, and it's somebody that you really, really mess with, in this case, Trent Reznor, and you hear, okay, Nine Inch Nails music, you're feeding for that fix. You want to get that fix, your Nine Inch Nails fix. And I think a lot of people are still hung over from Hesitation Marks. As good of a strong album as that was, I think a lot of people are still caught up on that. And quite honestly, I don't think Trent Reznor and crew were being deceitful or misleading in any type of way. I think it's just a situation where fans over the years, they have grown accustomed to a certain execution by Trent Reznor when he goes behind the Nine Inch Nails brand. They are expecting to get a full LP, meaning they are expecting to get 45 minutes and up of really great music. But I see and I understand why some people feel a little bit divided, but I'm kind of one of those guys that takes a step back and actually looks at everything as a whole. And my whole thing is, look, we're getting new music. That's all that really matters. Let's just judge the music and let's just pretty much go from there. So, with that in mind, let's talk about this album. Now, I checked out this album and I'm going track by track. Don't worry, we're not going to go all overkill on every single track. I love how Shit Mirror had basically kicked things off for this album. And I got to tell you, this one just had a lot of the Ramones. It had a nice, good, strong Ramones vibe to it. Kind of had that acid rock, industrial rock type of feel to it. Vintage Trent Reznor at his finest when you think about previous Nine Inch Nails efforts. All right. I loved it. The thing that was kind of a little bit disappointing, though, you basically just had two verses and that pretty much was it. And the way the song just abruptly comes to an end, you're going, damn, I was really bobbing my head to this. This was really starting to get really fucking good. What happened? And it just ends abruptly. I didn't like that. It was a great, and throughout this whole album, another thing that really stood out to me the most, great emphasis on the rhythm section. Really great emphasis on the rhythm section on this one. But Shit Mirror, lot of energy, I would have to say, but on all the tracks, a lot of energy, great emphasis on energy, great emphasis on rhythm. So let's get that out the break, out there. That's a tongue twister, isn't it? Let's get that out there off the break. That's how you say it. We go to our second track, Ahead of Ourselves. This was a well-timed drum and bass line type of track, I personally felt. It was good. It was actually pretty good. Didn't really have too much of a problem with it whatsoever. And when I say that, I don't want you guys kind of thinking, did you kind of have? I didn't have a problem with the track. It's just the drums and the bass line. Bass line in particular, I was really loving. But well-timed drum, good bass. Track 3 is where things really start to get pretty interesting, I personally feel. Play the goddamned part. That's pretty much a straight up instrumental. But man, as you're listening to this, and this is going to be one of those tracks where you're going to be listening to it over and over and over again because it's going to have different interpretations. And I can tell you, in the 3 times I've listened to this album so far, I swear I hear new little things. And it almost kind of comes off as though if your ears are really, really keen and you can listen to each track, it almost feels like Trent Reznor dropped a little bit of little Easter eggs in each sound, in each track that you're listening to that maybe you didn't quite pick up before. But on this track, play the goddamn part. Again, straight up instrumental. I swear you hear congos in here, and you've got a nice buildup of a creeping saxophone. Now, for newer Nine Inch Nails fans, this may sound a little bit, wait a minute, Trent Reznor, Nine Inch Nails, saxophone. No, he's played saxophone before on previous Nine Inch Nails albums. So, but I thought it was a nice transition how this industrial rock acid type of song starts to midway and then towards the end blend into a jazz effort, if you will. It was a really weird transition that this track in particular had went about. Weird journey. God breaks down the door. This is the track that a lot of us had heard about, got a little bit of a taste off the break, met a lot of mixed reactions from a lot of people. Me personally, I felt that to me, it felt as though Trent was kind of getting a little bit out of his comfort zone vocally because on this one, his voice really seemed very hollow. It seemed very low, very bass like, maybe kind of tenor like, you could possibly say. I thought maybe somebody else was loaning vocals on this track aside from Trent Reznor. So to know that it was Trent Reznor that was singing this, I'm going, oh, okay, well, this is kind of a nice little surprise. We normally don't see this from Trent. Okay, all right, cool. But a very hollow, very bassy type of track with regards to the vocals executed by Reznor. Actually, I really dug that track. Track 5, I'm Not From This World, pretty much another instrumental. So, I mean, if you're kind of keeping track here, you've got 6 tracks total. And really, when you look at, okay, well, how many pieces of music wise, how many tracks do we have Reznor doing his thing on the vocals? And really, you can just cut it down to 2 out of the 6 tracks, in all honesty. The final track, track number 6, Over and Out, I actually thoroughly had enjoyed this one the most. It had a 80s hip hop rap beatbox type of feel. It reminded me a lot of Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. The message, it kind of had that type of aura about it. And I really, really had enjoyed this. I kept coming back to this track the most. The bass line on this one is sick as hell. And you wait almost 3 minutes just to hear Trent Reznor come in on vocals. Because when you realize that this is the final track, you're saying to yourself, well, surely Trent's going to come in and say a little something, something. Surely he's going to lay down some vocals here. But just when you think, okay, it's going to fade out, we're not going to hear Reznor on the vocals again, he comes in at almost about the 3 minute mark. And he's pretty much just saying the same thing over and over, which is the I think he's saying something along the lines of what am I waiting for? Uh, you know, can't wait for long or something of that nature. And that's all he keeps saying over and over and over again. And different interpretations you could take away from that. Like, okay, is he talking about, you know, can't keep waiting much longer, need to make a change or whatever? Don't know how much longer he's going to wait. Okay, so what is he talking about? Is he talking about what's going on in the United States with regards to the political scene? Because everybody knows that previous Nine Inch Nails albums, you definitely had Reznor chiming off on a lot of the stuff that was going on in the world politically. So you can't help but wonder if maybe that's what he was talking about on this closer, or if it was a situation where he's talking about something else entirely different. Some people are kind of speculating, or maybe it's suicide. I beg to differ. I'm not picking up that vibe whatsoever, but that's one of those type of deals where it's a different interpretation for every single listener. But that track runs about almost 7 minutes, if not a little bit over 7 minutes long. And I tell you what, just to hear the transition of how that song gets ready to fade out, it gets to this part where it feels as though there's a transitioning, like you're falling in the air and you're just floating. You're falling, but you're floating at the same time. There is no end point, right? There is no surface. And it just feels like that's the way this track pretty much closes out on overall what I felt was a rather decent album, EP, whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to call it an album because if Trent Reznor is saying this is an album, then I'm going to go on ahead and I'm going to say this is an album. Now, look, I remember when Foo Fighters had released their latest album, and a lot of people had looked at Foo Fighters' last album, Concrete and Go. A lot of people looked at that as an EP, but they didn't shit on the Foo Fighters whatsoever. It basically was like, oh, hey, new Foo Fighters, great. And they ate it up. So, I mean, for me, to each its own. Everybody's going to continue to have this debate about, is this an LP? Is this an EP? I think we really should just be focusing on what is up with the music this go round. Now, I'm going to break this down in two different ways as far as buy or pass on this latest effort from Nine Inch Nails. If you are a hardcore Nine Inch Nails fan, meaning you grew up on Nine Inch Nails, you remember all the old stuff, and you pretty much have been there through thick and thin, then this album will probably be up your alley. However, I need to put an asterisk by it. If you are not a fan of Nine Inch Nails, when it comes to the Ghosts, remember Ghosts volume 1 through 4 or whatever? You remember that? That was just a straight up instrumental joint. If you weren't really a fan of that, you may not exactly be a fan of this latest effort, because for some of you hardcore Nine Inch Nails fans, this may be too much, a little bit on the heavy side of instrumental and not really enough vocals. So I would say to you, if you're looking for like the vintage Nine Inch Nails, pretty much if you're still hung over, hesitation marks, with teeth, then this might not be up your alley and you may want to pass on this. However, if you're a Nine Inch Nails fan that you love all things Nine Inch Nails, and whatever is being put out there, you got to have it, then I would say go on ahead, pick this up. I mean, if you get it through iTunes, Spotify, or whatever, you're basically only paying $6.99. I didn't see how much vinyl was. I would imagine though, vinyl, it's probably going to cost you maybe 15, $20 to get this or whatnot. But that's the way I would honestly break it down. I think the people that are complaining about the whole EP, LP concept, right? They're debating about that. I think the ones that are disappointed that the music wasn't longer are probably the ones that have been long-time hardcore Nine Inch Nails fans, and they really wanted like a massive, long type of album. They're probably the ones that's going to be griping about this. But like I said, um, if you want the long play, the true long play, and you weren't really a fan of Trent Reznor's and Atticus Ross's Social Media Network soundtrack, or Nine Inch Nails Ghost 1 through 4, if you weren't a fan of those, then pass. However, if you enjoyed that one and you enjoyed all the other efforts by Nine Inch Nails, then I would say go ahead, pick this up. All right. For me personally, it gets a pass. I actually am going to give it a pass. And my challenge to Trent Reznor would be, maybe at a later date, maybe combine this with the other two EPs that were put out before, and maybe do a little bit of remixing or whatnot, and include some additional tracks that maybe did not make the cut. And what honestly originally was supposed to be a trilogy concept, right? Supposed to be basically a three-part album, if you will. I wouldn't mind seeing him come back and combine all three of these and add in some more new material, and maybe that might please fans. Who knows? But one thing I will say in closing: Trent Reznor, now 53 years of age, going on 54, he's in this position now where he really does not have to release new music. I mean, he's got a lot of great things going on. He's making his money on the side, royalties, and just all the different business endeavors he's embarked on. And he really does not need to be making new Nine Inch Nails music. I think there is a large part of him that continues to make new Nine Inch Nails music because he loves going into the studio and he loves the freedom of expression. And for him, I love the fact that for Trent, it's not about how much money a album is making as far as number of copies that's sold. It's not a situation of, oh, well, where's this ranking on the Billboard, right? For him, it's just a situation of, okay, you know what? I think I've got something going on here in the head. I think I've got a really good concept. I got something I really want to lay out there. Let me go in, let me lay it down. And, to that, I will say, listening to this album, it felt more concise. You can really feel the maturity of Reznor. It really feels as though he's searching for, feels like the ultimate peak in creativity, if you will. And it felt like on this album, he was really doing a lot of soul searching on this one. And I tell you, knock on wood, I'm really proud of Trent. I'm really proud of the fact that he's been able to kick his fucking demons and just continue to keep putting out some really good music. And we all got to grow up sometime, guys. And I tell you what, he's really been doing a good job in being more mature, execution with regards to his music, being more concise, paying very great attention to detail. And I think we all could be in agreement. There's been previous Nine Inch Nails albums we've listened to where it just kind of seemed like creativity wise, there really wasn't that much emphasis, but it really feels like, and you can kind of say everything began with, I would say, the With Teeth album, that Trent really started putting great emphasis on the sound, the quality, everything. So gets a pass from me. Hey, if there's an album you'd love for me to consider reviewing, leave those comments below. You can also, on the RCWR Show channel, you can click on the community tab and you can leave a comment that way. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I am at the RCWR Show. If you appreciated this review, please do me a huge favor. Even if it might not apply to you, maybe you know somebody that's a Nine Inch Nails fan and maybe they were kind of debating on whether or not they should check out this album. Give this a thumbs up. Share it all throughout social media, Google Plus it. It really does wonders. That's going to do it for this go round. I'm wishing all of you all to be safe. Most importantly, be kind to one another. Hey, by the way, Luke Cage, the Marvel Netflix series actually had dropped on Friday, June the 22nd. So I'm actually going to go on ahead and binge watch that. And if I can get through the entire season this weekend, I'm actually going to put up a review. You can actually find that on the Patreon page. That'll actually be a free for all. Just type up patreon.com/RCWR show, and you'll be able to access that. It'll be free for you guys to check out. But do consider being my Patreon as we release bonus audio, video content of the RCWR show and other great series on a week-to-week basis. You got a lot of great content for just 5 smackaroos. You can't beat that. All right, guys. Again, wishing all y'all to be safe, be kind to one another. Have a fantastic weekend. Once again, 9 Inch Nails, Bad Witch gets a pass from me. I'll see you next go around. Y'all take care.